Hello guys, I'm Brandy with brandinimojo, Oracle and Healing, and I wanted to come to you tonight with a divine download light of reading. The purpose for this video is for the fact that I have been channeling messages from the ancients, and they wanted me to do a reading, and it came about last night when I was actually cleansing my cards. I went through this whole ritual where I went through to cleanse every single one of my decks, and the last one that came to cleanse was the Egyptian Tarot. I've also been feeling like within this energy in the full moon coming out of the 12/12 portal, I felt like the ancients had something to say about some of the mysteries that have been withheld from the collective for quite some time. So this is actually for me to sit and channel what the gods and goddesses of the ancient Egyptian world want to bring forth to us as far as arcane knowledge that we need to be looking at within the collective right now. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to dive in. I want to open myself up as a channel to the divine beings of the ancient world, to Isis, to Hathor, to Ra, Anubis, Ma'at, Isis, Osiris, Horus. I summon you forward and allow me to be a clear channel for the collective to deliver this message of Akashic knowledge and magic and mystery. Come forth and allow me to be your conduit to speak to the collective. As the conduit, I allow you guys to direct this reading and allow you to guide me into this reading for the collective to bring forth the messages that you want to share. Allow me to be your voice to guide the collective into this new age of enlightenment. I see the tower moment. I see the tower card underneath. This is called the pyramid. I also see the Queen of Cups in reverse. I don't know which one of these gods or goddesses are going to come forward first, but I'm just going to allow myself to be the channel and allow them to speak. We have the Five of Swords. I just want to take 3 cards for now, please. We have the King of Pentacles in reverse. I'm also seeing the Lovers in reverse. They're telling me to pull 2 more cards. Well, all right. The Nine of Swords. I have the Hierophant as well. Okay, and they're telling me that the Ten of Cups, the Ten of Chalices in reverse, is the overall energy for the reading. And this is about the discontentment within the collective for divine masculines and divine feminines, for the divine souls, for the divine lovers and the divine counterparts. Okay, I'm going to turn this down a little bit. This is about coming out of that feeling of entrapment within the collective. Here we have the Ace, or we have the Eight of Swords. All right, from what they're trying to tell me is that I do believe that it is Ma'at that is coming forward with the message right now, along with Isis. The goddesses are concerned about the collectives, the past of having violence between the divine feminine and the divine masculine natures. This is also about the ill-rewarded efforts and badly placed trust between the divine masculine and the divine feminine collective within. This is being brought up to the surface, whether it be consciously or unconsciously. And this is what the ancients wanted to come forward and actually help heal within the dynamic of the masculine and feminine collective right now. The divine lovers have been in discord for quite some time. There's needed to be some grounding and stability here with the King of Pentacles in reverse and the lovers in reverse. This Five of Swords energy that's coming up is coming up from past lives. Not just past lives, but the past as in a whole within the collective. This dynamic has been going on for thousands of years. Something shifted within the dynasty of kings, of the pharaohs of Egypt. And this could have been the upset between the balance of feminine and masculine nature. Not looking toward each other as equal parts, but looking at one another as this just innate battle between the masculine and feminine. The message of the Five of Swords is Osiris's defeat. And it's about the Five of Swords above Horus's eye represents the defeat of his father, Osiris. Attachment to material goods. Evil but indissoluble bonds. Okay, so at some point in time, humanity turned upon itself for material goods and for material gain. So this create a split in the dynamic between the divine masculine and the divine feminine. And this is what we have been dueling in nature for quite some time. According to Akashic records, this has been going on for thousands of years. And so this created a discord within the masculine energies and within the feminine energies. And it created an imbalance between lovers fighting for power, fighting for material gain in the material world. So with the King of Pentacles in reverse, there befell a weakness upon the masculine collective in front of a depraved old man. Corruption, strong and dangerous enemies had arisen against humanity and against the lovers. Okay, and from what I'm getting from these divine beings and what I'm channeling from them is a story of past of what happened to humanity and the fall of the divine lovers, and this inconsolable difference between the masculine and the feminine race. The battle that they have shared, not just with an external force or external forces, but the battle that they have shared against one another. The man befell a weakness for power and glory within the material world, and turned eventually, the masculines turned their back on the feminine race as a whole, and they turned their backs on divine union for material gain. And this is what took place in the ancient world, and what is still happening within the dynamics of divine feminine and divine masculine now in the current, and what is being called to the surface for us to heal as a collective. And this is why the gods wanted to come forward with this arcane knowledge, so that we understand how this dynamic shifted thousands of years ago and how we can shift it again now. How we can remove the anxieties from the situation between the masculine and the feminine, and remove the anxieties from the lovers' quarrel, to actually bring forward justice and peace within the collective, within the connection between divine masculine and divine feminine. Where it got distorted, this is what they're wanting us to know, is where it got distorted, and it got distorted within the masculine's need for power in the material world. And so this is what we are healing within the collective. So the Knight of Swords, what they want you to know is this is the blades of Thoth. The weapons arranged around the god of magical wisdom represent divinatory power and farsightedness, thanks to which Thoth can foresee the misfortune that will befall Osiris. Bad omens, recurrent nightmares, and anguish, bewilderment, and delays. We also have the Hierophant in reverse. I have a feeling like what they're telling me is that at some point this is where man lost faith in the gods. This is where man lost faith in himself when he turned his back on the gods to seek out power in the material world. And this is what befell the human race, as far as, you know, what the divine masculine and the divine feminine collective have to heal within themselves and within the past, and with everything that is happening right now. Everything is coming back around full circle to remove this anxiety and to remove this entrapment of our thoughts, because the Empress in reverse. The Empress has been in reverse for quite some time, along with the King of Pentacles. So has the cup of love, the inability to be able to fill up our cup of love because of the separation that we feel from each other. Whenever man decided to turn its back on spirit and the gods and love itself, it created a stagnation within our evolution, where we may have been in a creative energy, but we've been in a creative energy in the reverse sense, where we have not created things out of pure love. We have created things for this dynamic that we are having to heal within ourselves, is about the fact that we turned our back on spirit, we turned our back on on universal love and universal laws, to create from an ill-fated sense of of anxiety and oppression. And it is because we turned our back on spirit. It's because the masculines wanted power and the feminines didn't stand in their sovereignty to stop the masculines from this destruction. We did not band together, as far as from what I'm seeing and what I'm channeling from the gods and goddesses of the ancient world is, and from what they witnessed in humanity, was that divine masculines, humans, turned their back on spirit. They turned their back on the gods. They turned their back on the external forces that actually helped create us. And so this is what created the ill-fated dynamic within humanity that needs to be healed now. Why the feminines are looking toward why they're stuck in this lover's quarrel. Why love isn't being fulfilled within the divine masculine and within the divine feminine collective was because we turned our back on our highest selves. We turned our back on spirit. We turned our back on the gods and the ancient ones, the ancestors and the way showers. We turned our back on that for material gain and material power. So I'm going to read to you guys the Hierophant card, which is about the Lord of Arcana, which is inspiration. E = 5 and expresses universal law, the ruler of the infinite manifestations of being in the unity of substance in the divine world. In the intellectual world, it is religion, the relationship of the absolute being with the relative being, from the infinite to the finite. In the physical world, it is aspiration communicated by the vibrations of heavenly fluids. It is the proof of man in front of liberty of action. In the unbreakable circle of universal law, the Arcana V is depicted as the Hierophant, master of sacred mysteries. This principle of occult doctrine is seated between the two columns of the sanctuary. He is leaning on a 3-barred cross and is tracing the sign of silence on his breast with the index finger for the other hand. 2 prostrate men lie at his feet, and one dressed in red, the other in black. The Hierophant, supreme organ of sacred science, represents the genius of the good inspirations of the spirit and the conscious. His gesture invites one to concentrate in order to hear the voice of the heavens in the silence of the flesh's passions and instincts. The right column symbolizes divine law, the left one, the freedom to obey and disobey. The 3-barred cross is the emblem of the God penetrating into 3 worlds in order to make all of the manifestations universal, the manifestations of the universal life flower, which would be the papyrus. They used papyrus for many different things, which would have been it would have served as a universal tool. So the two prostrate men represent the genius of light and the genius of dark, both of whom obey the master of the Arcana. Remember, O son of earth, before saying whether a man is happy or unhappy, it is necessary to know what use he has made of his will. Since every man creates his life in the image of his works, the genius of good is to your right, and that of evil is to your left. Their voice only extends to your consciousness. Absorb it, and it will reply. The positive side of this card would mean that modesty, piety, clemency, relief from troubles, spiritual guides, the wise man to whom one turns, priest or doctrine, lawyer, religion, family, tradition, or inspiration, or magnetism. In a negative context, which is how this card actually came out, is representing what has happened and taken place in the past. This is a negative connotation, which means excessive generosity has been taken for granted. Kindness is ill rewarded, meaning people have acted out of kindness in hoping that they would receive with higher benefits, which would bring them, it would be ill rewarded. Loss of faith in self and others, loss of one's own morality, vulgar and material actions, intolerance, and enmity. Okay, so this is basically what has taken place, and this is what we are being healed now within our ancestral lines, within the past of where things took a turn for the collective thousands of years ago, and this is about us awakening to this knowledge and understanding that we can change this dynamic. So basically what they're saying is that man turned its back on God, and God's the higher powers that be. And so this is what has created the divide between masculine and feminine energies. This is what has created the distortions as well that we are now facing within the collective, and what we are being called to heal. We have the Eight of Swords in reverse underneath the King of Pentacles in reverse. Fatality, betrayal. We betrayed ourselves is what they're saying. Betrayals and difficulties. This is why difficulties have befallen upon humanity. The Three of Major Arcana, which would be the Empress card. The Empress is a supreme power in the divine world, balanced by an eternally active intelligence and absolute wisdom. In the intellectual world, it's the universal fecundity of being. In the physical world, it is nature at work, the seed of the actions that blossom from will. The Arcana, number 3, is portrayed by the image of a woman seated in the center of a radiant sun. She is crowned with the 12 stars, and at her feet rests the moon. She personifies universal fecundity. The sun is the emblem of creative power. The starred crown symbolizes, with the number 12, the houses or stations that this heavenly body travels from year to year around the zodiacal circle. This woman, celestial Isis or nature, holds a scepter surmounted by a globe. This is the sign of her perpetual action on things that have been or will be born. In her other hand, she holds an eagle, the symbol of the heights a spirit can rise to. The moon, placed under her feet, portrays the inferiority of matter and its domination by the spirit. Remember, O son of earth, that to affirm what is true and want what is just is already to create. To affirm and want the contrary means to devote oneself to destruction. If the Arcana number 3 is shown among the prophetic symbols of your horoscope, you can hope for success in your undertakings, provided that you know how to unite fecund activity with the rectitude of spirit that makes the works flourish. Okay, in a positive sense, would be about intelligence, understanding, beneficial influence, action, initiative, divine nature, fertility, authoritative but polite people, resolving help, abundance, complete success. But in this negative connotation that this card fell under, it's talking about the reversed lovers and how the lovers befell, how the divine masculine and feminine races befell this ill-fated will that has befell upon humanity, and how it started and how we can clean up the mess. This is about stupidity, errors, indecisions, lack of lucidity. This is about vanity, frivolity, and waste, sterility, and ability to create concrete and tangible things. Okay, so in a negative connotation, this is what has taken place within humanity and how it has turned the cup of love that the universe had given us within creation to create from a divine sense, from a place of divine worth and well-being and sovereignty within our divinity. We turned our back on this divinity when we turned our back on the higher powers that helped create us. When we looked toward material things instead of turning toward the spiritual sense of our divine creators, we catapulted humanity into this situation of distortion. We catapulted. We did this in our past. We turned our back on the cosmic laws, is what we did. This is when human laws became more important than the cosmic laws of the universe. And this is how we cursed ourselves. So with the cup of love, with the Ace of Cups in reverse, this is what we did in the past. This is how we got to this place of disconnect, disharmony, and discord. We turned to material things. We turned our backs on the higher power. We turned our backs on our creators. So this is how the negative changes befell humanity. This is how instability came about and came to be. Involution, scarce results, and small problems. Small problems became big problems within humanity, and we kept diving ourselves even deeper. So underneath the deck, we have the Queen of Swords. This is about the overall energy of what is coming to the forefront now with this arcane knowledge that needs to be brought to the collective at the moment. Some of the mysteries that have been hidden from us for quite some time, mysteries that we ourselves covered up within the collective. So this is about the women, because the men took power. They made the decision to snuff out the woman's voice. Positive women, or the woman brandishes a long dagger threateningly. This put the women, the divine feminines, in defense mode, having to defend. Women feeling widowed, women being left out alone in the cold, separation, feeling of revenge, difficult characters, separation, melancholy, sterility. This created sterility between the divine masculine and the divine feminines. This created the rift between divine lovers as well. The feminines being angry at the men for taking control and thinking more about the material gain instead of looking toward the gods, looking toward the spirits, looking toward creators, our divine creators, for guidance. The masculines took it upon themselves to go for power and material gain here in the material world, turning their back on spirit, leaving the divine feminine having to defend herself in the connection. Leaving the women to having to defend themselves and having to fight for sovereignty in this place of existence when we were supposed to be created as equals. This is when the dynamic changed. The divine masculines stopped revering the divine feminines as celestial beings, as goddesses. They were denounced their goddess rights, and they were thrown into slavery, treated as slaves, and not as divine counterparts, not as divine equals. This is when man got selfish and turned his back on the gods. This may have started within a dynamic of leaders, of pharaohs and leaders, of kings in power. It was the kings that became tainted with this idealism of power and stuffing the feminine out and looking at them as lowly creatures instead of creatures of equality. This is what the gods and goddesses want to tell you, is that the gods and goddesses were created just the same as we were, in the image of the creator, and they were sent here to begin an evolution of creation. And we were created as equals in the beginning, divine masculines and divine feminines. And somewhere along the line, the divine masculine decided that he had to have control, and the divine feminine was no longer his equal anymore, turning his back on spirit and allowing this connection to be severed in a very hurtful and very painful way for the divine feminines, because they were left having to defend this connection with spirit and having to be the one to heal the connection between the dynamics of divine masculines and divine feminines. The divine feminines were burdened because the masculine powers decided to take all the control and turn their backs on spirit, going for material power, going for material gain. All right, so now that they have brought forth the actual truth of why the divine masculine and why the divine feminine dynamic needs to be healed and why it's such a struggle, was because thousands of years ago, this was a turn of kings. A round of kings decided to turn their backs on spirit and the heart of creation and the whole of love. And they got selfish within the material plane of existence. They forgot their seed of divinity. They forgot their seed of power. They were seduced by earthly realms and earthly things. So what is happening now within the collective that is changing? Gods and goddesses of the ancient world. What is changing now within the dynamic, and what do we need to look at now? This is crazy. This card was popping out several times while we were shuffling. This is about a time of revelation. This is about a time of understanding. They want us to surrender the struggle. They want us to surrender this heated battle of passions between the dynamics of the masculine and feminine. They want us to turn our attentions back. They want us to turn our attentions back, and they want us to focus on what is more important. They want us to focus more on the silver lining of things. They want us to understand and be enlightened. I need 2 more cards, not 6 more cards. Show me what you want us to heal. Show us what you want us to heal, ancient ones. Show us what you want us to heal through the Akashic knowledge, through the Akashic records. How can we turn this series of events around for the course of humanity between the divine masculine and the divine feminine collective? The 7 of Wands. One more for the message. More clarification to the 7 of Wands, 9 of Wands, 4 of Swords, and the Tower, and the Pyramid. One more. All right. So, King of Swords. So with the Tower card, we have the message. Zero equals 70. The number 7 is in this card. The punishment of pride in the divine world. This is expressing the punishment of pride in the divine world. In the intellectual world, it is the spirit wasting away trying to penetrate the mystery of God. In the physical world, it is the collapse of fortune. The arcana XVI is represented by a pyramid with its top destroyed by lightning. A crowned and uncrowned man have fallen from its heights together with rubble from the thunderbolt. It is the symbol of conflict of material forces that can burn up the great as well as the small, kings like their subjects. It is also the emblem of rivalry that only leads from one side or from another to common ruin. It is the emblem of sterile projects, of hopes that wither, of undertakings that fail, of ambitions dashed of death by catastrophe. Remember, O son of earth, that every test of misfortune accepted with the resignation toward the supreme will of the omnipotent is a total advance for which you will be eternally rewarded. To suffer is to work in the order to detach oneself from matter, to clothe oneself in immortality. Arrogance, pride, and presumption, problems preceded by a series of warnings. Collapse of mistaken ambitions and broken equilibrium. Danger, exile. We are in danger of exile, they're saying. The fall of humanity was a deserved punishment, a destruction of goods taken by force or deceit. So this is what they're saying. They're saying that because humanity decided to take a turn and turn its back not only on each other, but turning its back on the higher power, created this dynamic over the last 2,000 years where this tower of destruction that is befalling us, in a sense where we do not know who we are. We do not know who we are connected to. We are trapped in turmoil. We are watching wars befall. I mean, we've basically more or less for the last 2,000 years have faced with this turmoil and destruction because of the fact that we turned our spirit on back. We turned our backs on spirit for material things. And for the fact of the matter is that the divine feminine actually stood back and allowed the divine masculine to take this power by force into the material world and allowed this destruction to befall humanity. So the divine feminine, in a way, suffers this fate of having to clean up this mess by being the leader in energy. And the divine masculine suffers in the sense of breaking free of codependencies from the material world in order to go back to that place from his divine to his divine self, and allowing spirit to actually work within him to create an empire of love and abundance for not only himself and his divine feminine, but for his subjects as well. Now, the divine masculine took this power that was given to him back in ancient times, and he abused this power, and the divine feminine pretty much stood by and allowed it to happen because she didn't speak her piece. She didn't stand up for divinity in that sense by bringing some kind of divine order to the divine masculine and his plans. So the divine feminine allowed herself to be victimized by the divine masculine's thirst for power. And so this is what has created the dynamic between the twin flames, the divine masculine energies and the divine feminine energies, and the distortions that have taken place in the last couple of thousand years. So this is the enlightenment of the mysteries of humanity and our creation that the gods and goddesses of the ancient world want you to know. So that was a pretty deep message all by itself, just with the pyramid card. Okay, now we're moving on to the message of the Nine of Wands. What is it that they want us to surrender now? Along with the whole idea of we need to, as far as divine masculines, need to release their power, their need for power in the material world, where the divine feminines need to release their truth and stand in their sovereignty and stand up for spirit. That's why the divine feminines are having to do the work as far as energy and bringing this together and helping the collective heal from the divine feminine standpoint, where we're standing in our sovereignty. We're speaking the truth. We're healing these connections. We're clearing out these past life karmas. We're now standing with the divine. We're no longer ignoring our intuitions, where we ignored our intuition in the past and we didn't stand in our sovereignty with spirit. So this is what is being healed within the collective, and this is what we need to surrender to the divine now. The message of the Nine of Wands is about the golden scarab, one of the most important amulets. Caprice scarab protects the heart and emotions in particular. Suspension of activities is already underway. Intuition of danger and need for ordination. This is a need to ordain these things for protection. Suspension of activities that have been underway. Like, this is why there has been this suspension happening between the divine and the divine feminine and divine masculine collective for the last couple of thousand years. And this is what is being called to our enlightenment now with the Four of Swords. Releasing. This is about Horus's revenge. A tearful eye above and a dignitary below are separated by four crossed swords, symbols of the revenge planned by Horus on the ill-doing of Set, the killer of Osiris. This is about vigilance and apprehension, sense of isolation and imprisonment, withdrawal and solitude. Okay. The Seven of Wands is about Nekhbet's vulture, the amulet linked to the power of the Mother God, symbol of the return of all living beings to nature. This is about discussions, negotiations, plans of alliance, enemies to affront, and a lively exchange of ideas. This is about bringing that surrender. This is about surrendering to the divine and allowing this connection between the divine lovers, the masculine collective and the feminine collective, coming together once again to serve for the divine once again, and turning over and relinquishing this lust for power and this lust for material things, to surrender these material things to the divine and stand in one with our divine nature and our divine creators. This is about walking through that portal and walking through that threshold of affronting with our enemies and creating this lively exchange of ideas to come together once again. Making negotiations to come together as a whole. The King of Swords. This is about the Lord of War. All right. We've been at war for a long time. Humanity hasn't just been at war. It's been at war with itself, within the divine masculine and the divine feminine collective. This was how the malevolent forces were actually able to come in and allow us to drive ourselves into this lustful downfall that we have experienced over the last 2,000 years in humanity, and why some of these malevolent forces would want to cover up our own true identity and our own true nature, not only knowing that we were sovereign enough to rule the world and to rule our own creations, but that we were sovereign enough to actually put ourselves in this position through our own lust, through our own will of accepting material things over divine. So the King of Swords is about the Lord of War. A sovereign raises the sword on high to the symbol of military power. Magistrate, politicians who imposes his authorities, legal action, ideological battle. Okay, this is still taking place within the divine the divine race of human beings. Okay, this sovereign need for power. This is what the ancients want us to know, is that we have the ability to actually free ourselves of that prison that we've put ourselves in. For the last question that I'm going to ask for the collective is, what do the ancients want us to know, and how we can maneuver the outcome for this reunion of divine masculines and divine feminines to heal this dynamic within the collective now. So overall, I think we have the Sun. This is the Sun card. I want to get 2 more cards. Oh, Jesus Christ. Okay, so this is going to be a whole story, guys. I'm sorry. So this is about Anubis bringing scales. This is about the scales of justice. The Sun. The Magician, which is Osiris. Walking away from the 8 of Cups. This is about the 6 of Pentacles. And the Ace of Wands. The Falcon. All right, so the overall energy is the 4 of Cups, the 4 of Chalices. So I'm going to start with the overall energy with the 4 of Chalices. This is about Nekhmet's left. The vulture flying toward the left carrying the shin is a symbol of a bad omen. Irritating relationships, new but not positive acquaintances, and fortune overturned. This is about how we can overturn this bad fortune that we've experienced for the last couple of thousand years within the dynamic of divine masculines and feminines, and the distortions that we are being called forth by the divine to actually heal, to save ourselves in this striving to be better within humanity. Okay, so the first message out was the Sun card, I believe. So Q equals 100 and expresses the supreme heavens and the divine world. In the intellectual world, it is a representation of truth. In the physical world, it is happiness. The original arcana XIX in Pitosis Pack was represented by a radiant sun that shone on 2 children, images of innocence, who held hands inside of the circle decorated with flowers. It is the symbol of happiness promised by the simplicity of life and the moderation of desires. Remember, O Son of Earth, that the light of mysteries is a formidable fluid put to the service of will by nature. It illuminates those who know how to direct it and strikes those who ignore or abuse its power. Harmony and friendship and serenity, sincere feelings of love and happiness and satisfaction, a positive period of change, solution of problems, artistic illumination, faithful collaborators, glory, honor, and fame. All right. So what they want to affirmate with that card is also scales of justice. What I'm getting is justice. Anubis. Okay, no. This is the death card. So M equals 40. And this is about the Reaper skeleton. This is transformation. The letter Mataloth. Number 40. M equals 40 and expresses the perpetual movement of creation, destruction, and renewal in the divine world. In the intellectual world, it is about ascension of the spirit to the heavenly spheres. In the physical world, it is natural death that is the transformation of human nature that has reached the end of its organic period. The original arcana was Pack represented by a skeleton reaping heads in a meadow from where men's hands and feet appeared on every side as the sickle continued its work. It is the emblem of the perpetual destruction and renewal of all forms of being in the reign of time. Remember, O Son of Earth, that terrestrial things do not last for long, and that the highest powers are mown down like grass in the fields. The dissolution of your visible organs will arrive earlier than you expected, but do not fear it, because death is nothing but a part of another life. The universal unceasingly reabsorbs everything that came from its breast that has not been spiritualized. But the release from the material instincts for a free and voluntary union of our soul within the laws of universal movement creates in us a second man, the celestial man, and so our immortality begins. Unexpected changes, radical transformations, endings, fatalities, disillusionments come to an end. Spiritism, this is about necromancy. Initiatory death, understanding of the mysteries of being, germination. So this is about humanity rebirthing itself in the truth, okay? And walking away from emotional disillusionment, okay? Disillusions. This is about putting an end to what was never to be, honestly. The unexpected changes and the radical transformations that have taken place within humanity are trying to revert itself back to its original divine state of being. And this is what is taking place within the collective right now. This is also what is dying and being resurrected within the collective. The old proverbial ways of being and being able to release the codependencies of the material world to go back into this divinity and this union with divinity, not only within ourselves, but within the entire collective. The Eight of Cups in reverse. Is the card of papyrus buds. The Ankh or Ansate cross is a very powerful talisman, a symbol of positive energies that bring life within them. In a positive sense, the satisfaction of physical well-being, solution to problems, repose, and recovery. The negative connotation of this card, which is why it's in reverse, is about mistakes and imperfections and a need for guidance. This is about humanity's need for guidance right now in remembering the destruction of the story of Set and Osiris, and how Set betrayed Osiris for material gain. But the divine was looking over the situation, more or less, in Osiris's case, and Osiris went into his life of infinity. Okay, he went into his eternal state of being. But he was still revered a god of the underworld. Okay, he just went through a transformation. So basically, this is what humanity has done unto itself, with that betrayal, okay, within itself. And what Osiris and Isis are bringing forth right now, along with Anubis in this message, that there is a magic within this universe taking place right now within the collective of divine feminines and divine masculines to come together and release this codependency upon material things, to turn around and take this last couple of thousand years of oppression and this separation between lovers and between divine counterparts to actually come together to bring balance within the force of nature now, to overturn this deception, this illusionary deception that we've brought upon ourselves. Okay. So this is about needing guidance right now from the divine. And the number one card is about the magician. This is the magician. All right. So the letter Athoim, the letter A, it represents the number one and expresses in the divine world the absolute being, which contains and from which emanates the infinite of possibilities. In the intellectual world is about unity, the principle and synthesis of numbers, and will, the principle of actions. In the physical world, it is about man, the highest of the relative beings, called to elevate himself for perpetual expansion of his faculties to the concentric spheres of the absolute. The arcana number 1 is represented by the magician, an example of a perfect type of man that is in full possession of his physical and moral faculties. He has been painted standing in an attitude of will ready for action. He is clothed in white, a symbol of original and reattained pureness. A serpent, biting its tail, serves as his belt, which is the symbol of eternity. His forehead is bound by a circle of gold, and gold signifies light, and the circle expresses the universal circumference within which created things to gravitate. His right hand holds a golden scepter, implying that command that he raises towards the heavens is a sign of aspiration toward wisdom, science, and strength. The index finger of his left hand points toward the ground, signifying that the mission of a perfect man is to reign over the material world. This double gesture also expresses to the fact that the human will must reflect down below divine will in order to produce good and impede evil. There is a cup, a sword, and a shekel, or gold coin, in the middle of which a cross has been engraved. In front of the magician on a cubic stone, the cup signifies a mixing of the passions that contribute to happiness or unhappiness. According to whether we are their masters or slaves, the sword signifies work, struggle against obstacles, and the trials that pain makes us suffer. The shekel, symbol of determined value, portrays aspirations realized, completed works, the sum of power, conquered by will's perseverance and efficiency. The cross seal of infinite that marks the shekel announces the future ascension of this power of the spheres of the future. Remember, O son of earth, that man must act like God without pause. To want nothing or to do nothing is less grievous than to want or to do evil. It is no less grievous than to want or to do evil if the magician appears among the prophetic signs of your horoscope. He is announcing that strong will and faith within self, guided by reason and love for justice, will lead you to the objective that you want to reach and will persevere you from danger on your way. Initiative, dexterity, astuteness, political skills, diplomacy, ability, autonomy, refusal of any suggestion or prejudice, start of sentimental, professional, or economic undertakings. This is about an economic change. This is about economic evolution. This is about the initiative to strike that economic evolution within humanity. This is taking place within the divine right now. Humanity is being called to bring balance to this. I can't say this enough. The Six of Pentacles. Is called the papyrus sheath. The bundle of papyrus symbolizes the triumph of those who have overcome the initiatory trials. Positive, help given or received, collaborations presents a reward and gratification and restitutions. All right, so this is what happens when we actually pull together. We release ourselves from these codependencies of the material world and we surrender to the divine. We surrender to our higher calling and we surrender to our higher selves and allow the divine to bring in abundance into our lives rather than seeking power in the material world to gain that material abundance that we so desire. So this is where we pull together as a collective and we heal this connection. Okay, with the Ace of Wands here. This is about Horus's scepter. Horus, the god with an eagle's head, the one on high, son of Isis and Osiris, with the sign of power over the earthly world. The spirit of initiative, creativity, and invention start an undertaking of virile strength. Okay? This isn't just about Horus's revenge for the loss of his parents, because Isis in turn did kill herself whenever Osiris was killed. They were both sent to the divine spectrum of existence where they now had to lead from their sovereignty, from the underworld or from the other world. Okay. And this is also about where humanity right now, between the masculines and the feminine, need to go within and release these codependencies upon their material needs and desires for the material world. Because the things that we truly desire, as far as being an arcane knowledge, being an arcane being of knowledge, and being able to have these sovereignties as divine beings, we know that when we leave this world, we go into a world of infinity, of infinite creation, where we are truly living our divine existence, and not from the material plane of existence here on earth. And this is where, when we came here, this is where we got lost as far as the direction of where we were headed. And it was because, we were given this power and sovereignty in the material sense, from the human perspective. And it was the power that we had here as sovereign beings that drove us in our lust, to this separation between the masculine and the feminine, and what caused the distortion. And what the divine's wish is, really, overall, in this whole entire situation, what the divine's wish is to actually bring the divine masculine and the divine feminine collective back into union with one another, and not with just each other, but with divine as well. This is the Emperor. Okay. This is about coming back into sovereignty with humanity. There's the Empress. All right, the Emperor and the Empress. Oh my God. But this is about union. Four of Pentacles. Jesus. So with the Emperor here, you have D equals 4. You have the cubic stone, which is representation of realization. The letter Dynane equals number 4, and expresses the perpetual and hierarchical realization of the virtualities contained in the absolute being in the divine world. In the intellectual world, it is the realization of the ideas of the contingent being, thanks to the fourfold work of spirit: affirmation, negation, discussion, and solution. In the physical world, it is the realization in the acts directed by the science of truth, love for justice, strength of will, and work of the organs. The arcana is represented by the man wearing a helmet with a crown. He is seated on a cubic stone. His right hand holds a scepter aloft, and his bent right leg rests on the other in the form of a cross. The cubic stone, the figure of a perfect solid, signifies the completed human work. The crowned helmet is the emblem of strength that has vanquished power. This dominator, in the possession of the scepter of Isis, and the stone that serves him as the throne, signifies matter that has been dominated. The cross, traced out by the position of his legs, symbolizes the 4 elements and the expansion of human power in all of its senses. Remember, O son of earth, that nothing resists steadfast will that has the science of truth and justice as a lever. To fight to ensure realization of them is more than a right. It is a duty. It is a duty. The man who triumphs in this struggle is only carrying out his terrestrial mission. He who succumbs, dedicating himself to it, acquires immortality. If the arcana appears in your horoscope, it means that the realization of your hopes depend on a more powerful being than yourself. Try to get to know it, and you will obtain its support, which is why I will interrupt and say that this is why the gods and goddesses of the ancient world are here with us today in this reading. Being more than yourself and trying to get to know these beings will help you obtain their support. Positive strength, earthly power, authority, legality, moral integrity, and unshakable will, powerful and generous protector, solutions to material problems. Standing in the sovereignty with spirits in the higher powers that be, to right the wrongs that we have done to ourselves, honestly, in this whole entire situation, is what the divine and what the gods and goddesses of the ancient world want to come and aid us with now. So we have the Empress. No, that's not the Empress. Who is that? That is, that's the Chariot. No, not the Chariot. Hold on. Okay, no. This is Justice. Justice, the scale. This is Ma'at. Okay, with the scales of justice. Ma'at's coming through with the message. The scales and the sword, equilibrium, letter. The word Halitha. I'm assuming this was a goddess or a person in the ancient world. H equals 8 and expresses absolute justice in the divine world. In the intellectual world, it is attraction and repulsion. In the physical world, it is relative, folly of that emanates from men. The arcana is portrayed by a woman seated on a throne whose brow is encircled by a crown decorated with sword points. It is in her right hand that she is holding a sword turned upwards. In her left hand, some scales. She is Themis, the ancient symbol of justice, who weighs actions, and a counterweight opposes the sword of expiation to evil. Justice that emanates from God is balanced, reaction that rebuilds order. That is the equilibrium between right and duty. The sword here is a sign of protection for the good and a threat for the evil. The eyes of justice are bandaged to point out how she weighs and strikes without taking the conventional differences that men establish among themselves into consideration. Remember, O son of earth, that to reproduce victory and dominate obstacles already overcome is just a part of man's task. To achieve it completely, it is necessary to establish equilibrium between the forces that are brought into play. Every action produces a reaction, and will must foresee a clash between opposing forces. In order to temper and annul them, every future act is balanced between good and evil. Every intelligence that does not know how to balance itself resembles an aborted sun. The law of equilibrium. Law, equilibrium, equity, justice, harmony, fatality, subjection to consequential logic, respect for natural hierarchy and order, rule of life. Okay, so basically what they're saying is that the rule of life in this situation is that humanity did this to themselves when they turned their back on the divine. They've said that 1,000 times. But what they want you to know and how you can right the wrongs is to release this codependency on your power struggle. Release this codependency to be almighty and to be all powerful, because you are not only given the sovereign right to change and to create your own divine will within your own realm of existence, but it was not to enslave humanity with this power. This power was taken advantage of. This power was given to humankind to advance in evolution, not to destroy one another in evolution, and to create these rifts that have created this imbalance within the malleable forces of nature. Okay, so this was about the fact that humanity has developed this attachment to the material plane of existence and to the thrall of power, where the thrall of power was always within you, and it was never going to be, it was never meant to be used in this distorted fashion. It was manipulated. Okay, we allowed our abilities to be manipulated. We manipulated our own abilities to bring about the destruction of our own self, our own humanity. And so this is why we are being called forth to acknowledge this. This is why the gods and goddesses of the past, of the ancient world, are coming to guide us now, back to this sovereignty within divinity, and to release these illnesses within ourselves, to be able to connect to the divine and to know that we are divine within. Who is that? Huh. It's the Hermit. This is why we've been asked to go within. The letter TH. TH represents the number 9 and it expresses absolute wisdom in the divine world. In the intellectual world, it is prudence, ruler of will. In the physical world, it is caution, a guide to actions. The arcana is depicted by an old man leaning on his stick as he walks, carrying before him a lit lamp that he hides under his cloak. The old man personifies the experience acquired during one's life work. The lit lamp signifies the light of intelligence that must be spread over the past, over the present, and the future. The cloak, half hiding the lamp, signifies discretion. The stick symbolizes the support that prudence gives the man who does not free his own thought at all. Remember, O son of earth, that prudence is the wise man's armor. Caution enables him to avoid rocky coasts and precipices, and have a presentiment of treachery. Take it as your guide in all actions, even in the smallest. Here below is nothing, and nothing is indifferent. A pebble can overturn the chariot of a master of the world. Remember that if words are silver, silence is golden. Wisdom, prudence, caution, solitude, search for spirituality, silence, reserve, austerity, celibacy. Person able to offer precocious advice, clarifying mysteries, and resolving serious problems. The doctrine, the healer, the alchemist, the expert in every field. Okay, so basically what they're telling us is that we have learned over through the course of humanity, and especially within the last 100 years, what we have excavated from the ancient world are actually our signs and clues as to how the destruction upon mankind has actually taken a turn for the worse and what has actually happened to us. It's not about the mysteries of where we came from. It's about the mysteries of who we really are and the fact that the oppression and the turmoil that humanity has suffered in the last couple of thousand years was brought upon by our own selves, because we decided, what we did was, as a humanity, we got a little too big for our britches. So the divine feminines and the divine masculines actually each have their roles and their parts to play in that, and the responsibility to bear for what has taken place within the dynamic of divine masculines and feminines within the last couple of thousand years. So the fact of the matter is, as that the masculine collective decided that they were going to take power and sovereignty over the land and over material possessions, leaving the divine feminine actually powerless to stop him. So what happened in that dynamic was the divine feminines wound up suffering their truth and having to be the leaders in energy to flip this dynamic back to the good. So what actually happened was, when the divine masculines decided to thwart divinity, to take their seat of power and to take their dominance in the material world, and to dominate within the material world, it left the divine feminines with the curse of having to clean up the mess. And so this is why the divine feminines have been left out in the cold, as far as the divine masculines are, this divine masculine and divine feminine dynamic, where we've got the lovers in reverse, where things have not been equal in the last couple of thousand years. This was not how the divine meant for our creation and our evolution to take place. We were meant to stand together in our sovereignty and help one another to create a utopia for the world, not to decide to, get selfish and materialistic within this plane of existence for the power that we were given. We took advantage of that. Okay. And divine feminines played their part as well to allow it to happen. And so this is why the collective is suffering, and this is what the collective is needing to heal, and this is what the divine is actually trying to call forward in revelation, to be dealt with right now. This is a pretty heavy thing. This is about turning over a couple of thousand years of a cycle where the divine masculines basically decided to abuse power, and divine feminines refused to speak up for the truth and for justice sake. So this is where the actual curse of things, as far as humanity and its downfall, and why we've been so lost, and why as a culture we have strived to find the truth, not only asking questions and mysteries, and to get around the mystery of where we came from and who we once were, but this is about us getting back to ourselves. This is where we need to bring balance into the fold. We need to release our need for material things. We need to release our lust for material power. And this is where we also need to trust in the divine to help us fix this battle within ourselves, to release this passionate need for control. We have to release this need for control. And this is what the gods of the ancient world wanted to bring forward, and wanted me to pull out from the Akashic knowledge and from the Akashic records. I'm sorry, I cannot talk right. So I'm not sure how this message is going to resonate with the collective, but it's a pretty deep one. And I know that I channeled Osiris, I channeled Isis, I channeled Ma'at and Anubis in this reading. And this is about turning that ten of cups that's been upside down for the last couple of thousand years. This is about turning that energy back to the good, because now we have walked through these portals. We are going through these awakenings. We're starting to realize all of that we need to release. And these are habits from the past. These are habits from the ancient world that we are being called to release, because this is where we went wrong a couple of thousand years ago. This is where we went wrong in a time where the lost pharaohs once walked. This is where the destruction of humanity actually began. It didn't happen in the midst of creation. It happened after thousands of years of human evolution and the power that human beings were given as beings of creation, of divinity. And so this is where humanity actually took that for granted and let the lust of power take over. And so this is what created that distortion between the divine feminine and divine masculine collective. And this is what we are being called forward to heal now. A lot of us that are twin flames, a lot of us that are old souls, that have been reincarnated multiple times over. A lot of us have actually walked in these times with the ancients. We walked among the gods. We walked among Osiris and Isis and Ma'at. And even if these beings were just beings of the stars, handing us divine wisdom and divine creation here on earth, we still at some point turned our backs on divine creation, regardless of what culture the story comes from. This isn't just from the Egyptian perspective of things. This is from the arcane perspective of things. This is where multitudes of human beings that were put here on earth, they were given the seed of power to lead humanity into greatness. And what they did was they led humanity into its own destruction, okay, and its own separation of power within divine. Okay, so anybody that has thought in the last couple of thousand years that they were creating things from a divine perspective, they in fact were not creating things from a divine perspective. They were moving from a place of lust and power, and they were taking advantage of the abilities and the powers that they have been given here on an earthly plane of existence. And this is what we are actually being called for to awaken and enlighten to, and to change within the dynamics now. not only for ourselves, but for future generations. You know, this is to free ourselves of that tyranny that we allowed ourselves to enslave ourselves in, and to give us back our sovereign right as divine beings, to stand with the creator once more, and to turn over this material need for self-gain and for self-power. Okay, because acting from this place is not from our highest good, and this is why we need to turn that 10 of cups in reverse into the 10 of cups. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and end this reading, because this is what they wanted to bring forth to us. Okay, and they can tell us over and over. They can give us. They've tried to warn us for several thousand years to get our shit together. Okay, and so what they're really wanting is to be that prominent voice once again, so that we don't turn our backs on it anymore, because they don't want us to suffer. This is the Queen of Cups. You know, they want to help us end our suffering, because we actually did it to ourselves. You know, and they want us to come back to that universal place of wisdom, back to that place of unconditional love, that place of unconditional transparency, and healing that connection between the divine and humanity. So this has been a message from Brandy, from Brandinimojo Oracle and Healing. I want to thank you guys for watching, subscribing, liking. If you guys have any feedback, please let me know in the comments section. If you guys have any need for to book personal reading, I not only channel mediumships, but I do general readings as well. I do. There is a list of there. I do believe I did put a list of my services in the description box. And donations are always welcome. So anything that you guys would see fit to donate to the channel would help grow the channel, and would be much appreciated. And Tribal Awakening Ministries would thank you very much. And so I want to give you guys love and light, and a message from the goddesses and goddesses of Egypt. They want you to know that they are always with you guys. They are a part of that star collective, trying to help one another, help us, help humanity evolve, of course. They are trying to help us on our missions, on our paths, and they are hoping and praying that that we choose the choice of free will to overturn these things that have taken place in a negative fashion within the collective for the last couple of thousand years. They really are urging for this healing within collective, for the highest good. So they did want to come forward and give us this arcane knowledge today. So we thank you. And I want to thank them all as well for allowing me to be their channel, and allowing me to be that voice, to speak with the collective today, because they've really been needing a voice to come through. So they definitely want to extend their gratitude for any and all who listen. They have missed this connection with humanity. They have missed this connection since we turned our back on it thousands of years ago. So they're waiting for us all to come home, to be with them, and to stand with divinity, to be how do you say it, a benevolent force within the cosmos, because this was what our creators intended for us to be. We were intended to be universal creatures, of love and light. So they're waiting for us to come home and join them on this mission of love and light and our evolution. So anyway, I'm going to end this now. I love you guys. Thank you so much. I wouldn't be here without the need to help you guys, and to be here to serve, and to use my gifts to help out. So I just want to express some gratitude for that, and just be thankful that I can be here and be a channel for them whenever they need me to speak to you guys. So I want to end that with love and light and gratitude. I want to wish you guys well, and I'll be back very soon for the energy reads for the astrological signs. I'm not sure if I will do them individually, but we'll see. But anyway, there will be probably a series of 4 videos for you guys to look forward to in the updates and energy for the astral signs for earth, air, fire, and water energies. So stay tuned to brandinimojo, Oracle and Healing. And this is my channel, and welcome in, and thank you guys for joining. Love and light, guys.